Hello, I'm Tom Pansella with the Missouri Institute of Mental Health. We are doing this program from the Department of Mental Health's Spring Institute training session down at Lake of the Ozarks. That's why the background looks a little different, might sound a little bit different to you, but we're glad you could join us. With me is Geoff Lanham. He is himself an adult with ADHD and a parent of children with autism and ADHD. And he's also the coordinator of a group called Project Life, which provides resources, mostly publications, for people dealing with mental health issues. Geoff, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, it's good to be here.
I guess that it'd be good to start, since we're going to try and do kind of a parent's perspective on autism and ADHD, with giving us a little bit maybe your own background.
Well, I have 3 children that have been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. My daughter, who's 21, my son, who's 18, and my youngest son, who's 10. My youngest son has also been diagnosed with Asperger's, which is on the autism spectrum, and we found that out through a process because he was originally diagnosed with ADHD, but a lot of the symptoms are similar, and so it took a while for us to get that educational autism diagnosis, but once we got that was something that even though it added another acronym to his name, we were pleased to find out what was causing him to have difficulty in school with his peers. So that's really helped, and I think that's one of the things that parents need to do, is to look beyond what maybe the original diagnosis is, and they need to educate themselves about attention deficit disorder, if that's what their child has been diagnosed, and find out other things, what other disorders there are that may have the similar traits. So then that way, as a child gets older and things may happen in the classroom that didn't happen when they were in kindergarten, they might be able to put a finger on, well, my child may have Asperger's or may have autism. So the parent themselves needs to educate themselves regarding the disorder in order to help their child.
And you had to educate yourself a little bit too, because in the process of finding out about your kids, you found something out about yourself.
Absolutely. When my oldest son was diagnosed in the 2nd grade with ADHD, I saw a lot of the similarities with him that I did when I was in grade school. Acting out, getting up from my seat, not being able to pay attention and focus. And so as I looked into the diagnosis of ADHD and the traits that kids with ADHD have, I saw a lot of those similarities in myself. And so I went to the doctor, and of course you take the tests and all those kinds of things, and I got diagnosed as well. So it's been a blessing for me, because I now can be able to say, okay, this is why I behaved that way as a child. And so it really has helped me in knowing why I'm not very organized and understanding those kinds of things.
Well, how would you describe your household now?
My household is what I'd like to consider organized chaos. And the wonderful thing about the technology age is that because I am not the most organized person in the world, and if I would write a note down, well, it might get lost in another pile of notes. But because we have Microsoft Outlook and those kinds of programs on computers, I can put down appointments on my computer, and I always try to put them a day in advance, so that way it always pops up on the screen, you got this to do tomorrow, and so that helps me out in my work. And at home, thank God for answering machines, so that I'll leave a message at home, and so that way I can push the button, hear what I need to do, also write it up on the calendar, those kinds of things. I have to with my kids, because especially with the Asperger's and autism, is that we have to plan things sometimes several days in advance. Just the task of going to a baseball game, I may have to start 2 days before to prompt my son, okay, now on Wednesday you're playing ball at 5:30. And then, the next day in the morning I'll remind him, okay, now today you're playing ball at 5:30. And then when he comes home from school, I'll remind him again that this is what we're doing, because oftentimes, folks with ADHD and with Asperger's, as though we're very spontaneous, we don't like spontaneity. And so, and I know that's kind of, may not seem like it makes a lot of sense, but we really are very spontaneous people where we'll get up and do something at the drop of the hat, but if someone else suggests it, then it kind of takes us out of our comfort zone, and it can upset us. So constantly reminding my boys, this is what needs to be done. And also it helps me as a parent because I'm able to then remember what my kids need to do.
You've had to deal with having kids in school and to deal with teachers and whatnot. How has that experience been for you?
Well, for the most part, it's been a very, very positive experience. The teachers in Columbia have been willing to work with us, and they want what's best for their students. And fortunately enough, I'm in the business where I'm able to do research and find out information about autism and ADHD. And if somebody comes up to me and offers me suggestions on how I can better serve my kids, I'm there with open arms because I want to make their lives easier and better for them. And so I take the attitude with educators and teachers that I as a parent have a tremendous amount of information, not only as in the mental health profession, but also because I know my kid better than anybody else. And so if I can offer them suggestions as to how to make my son's day better for them, then they're going to have a better day, and in turn my son's going to have a better day as well. One of the examples that we used with my youngest son was when he was in first grade, or kindergarten, excuse me, he was having difficulty, he would get angry. And so one of the things we told him, we said, okay, Grant, when you get angry, stomp your feet. And so this particular day I went to school to pick him up, and the teacher came out and she gave the universal thumbs up sign, which means he had a great day. So I give the thumb signs back, and so I said, he must have had a great day. She said he had a perfect day. She goes, when he got angry, he stomped his feet. She goes, you would have thought he was one of those river dancers because he was stomping his feet all day long. But it worked. And so that was one of the things that we did. But what works today may not work tomorrow with my kids as well. So we constantly are trying different things. With my oldest son, Jordan, he would get up and start pacing the room. Well, what they did for him was they put a piece of tape at the back of the room. And so when he got antsy, he was able to get up and walk back and forth on that piece of tape. He didn't disrupt anybody, and yet he was able to get up and walk back and forth. And somebody told me a long time ago that Albert Einstein said, when you step on your left foot, you activate the right side of your brain. When you step on your right foot, you activate the left side of your brain. And I know for me as an adult, and I even know my kids, that we oftentimes, when we're trying to do some work, trying to process some stuff, it's easier for us to get up and take a walk, and then we're able to process things. So my kids with ADHD, we learn a lot differently than kids than the other kids. So if there's something that's going to make my son's life easier in the classroom, where he isn't disrupting with his students, then it's also going to make the life of the teachers as well a lot easier.
You talked at one point about dealing with the deficits that kids have, but also that kids learn differently, and that they have certain strengths that they bring to the table too. Talk about that a little bit for us.
Well, I think especially for my son and for some other kids that I've seen and talked to, is that they learn totally different than, and unfortunately, they have a curriculum in the educational system, and they're supposed to follow it. But for Grant, and when he was in kindergarten, they had the math question, 24 plus 16 equals what? And of course, he had 40 written down. And when they came up to him to ask him how he did it, it was to show his work, he just said, well, it's there. And they said, well, yes, but you need to explain it. So he looked at the teacher and he said, well, in my mind, I saw 40 frames of film. I backed it up 16, and that left 24. So that's how he thinks. So I think as educators and as parents, we need to take the approach, okay, how are these children thinking, and how can we build on their score? So that's how he thinks, because it is very frustrating for him when he has to show his work. He can multiply things in his head faster than a lot of people can use calculators and get the number. So instead of penalizing him for getting the answer right, how can we as parents and how can we as educators make it a positive thing for them? Another example, when my oldest son was in 3rd or 4th grade, they were doing the multiplication tables, and they had to do them in a timed manner. And Jordan knew the answers, but just was never getting it done under time. So what would they do? They would make him go to the classroom at lunchtime and do it. Well, all his buddies are out playing basketball and shooting hoops, having a good time at recess. He's stuck in the lunchroom or in the classroom. Well, that's not a very positive learning experience for him. So I went to his teacher and I said, look, he's having difficulty taking it from here and putting it down here, and you know he knows the answers. I said, a matter of fact, just the other day I was out with him, and I said, okay, Jordan, let's go over your multiplication tables. I said, if the Chiefs and the Raiders are playing football, and the Chiefs score 3 touchdowns and the Raiders score 2 touchdowns, how many touchdowns have they scored? He said 5. I said, how many points have the Chiefs scored? He said 21. I said, how many have the Raiders scored? He said 14. I said, how many have they scored altogether? He said 35. I said, okay, now I said, if you and I go out and play golf, and we both play 9 holes each, how many holes have we played? He said 18. I said, if we do it on the back 9, how many have we played? He said 36. I said, if we do the whole thing again tomorrow, how many have we played? He said 72. I said, okay, you just multiply 2 times 9, 4 times 9, and 6 times 9, or 8 times 9. All right, and you multiply 3 times 5, 2 times 5, and 5 times 7. Okay, so all of a sudden, I took a different thing, even though we were still dealing with numbers, but I took something that really interested him, and he was able to get those numbers and have them come up just like that. So I told his teacher, take him out to the playground, let him shoot hoops, you ask him the questions, and I guarantee you he'll go through that list faster than he can, most students. And it worked. And so those are the kind of adaptations that we have to make as parents, and I think as educators, to help our students in the classroom.
You talked about going out and shooting hoops and playing with your son. Does leisure play an important role in what you're doing there?
I think leisure plays a very important role. Number one, you're taking them away from the quote-unquote academic setting. So, for instance, my son loves to fish, and there was a part in his curriculum in science on ecology. So I read over the book, and then we went out fishing, and we talked about ecological issues and the food chain and picking up trash and the damage that trash can have on an ecosystem and all those kinds of things. So while you're teaching them and teaching them what they need to learn in the school, and it doesn't seem like it's educational, so they're not near as stressed. And the thing is if you're doing something that you enjoy and you're learning something at the same time, you're more than likely going to retain that information a lot easier than you're doing something that you don't like, and you're forced to learn those kinds of things. So leisure plays a tremendous role. I think one of the things that I've learned with my oldest son was that in soccer, and I helped coach him because of his attention deficit disorder. He would be out playing, and of course, like any other second or third grader, if they're playing baseball, you go to any baseball field in America where there's a second or third grader out there and playing right field, they're looking up at the sky and picking dandelions, throwing rocks. But one of the things that I did with my oldest son is I said, I'll whistle and I'll give you the thumbs up sign. I said, that means, okay, it's time to refocus, pay attention to what's going on. I could have yelled at him and said, hey, get your head in the game, those kinds of things. But I tried to make it a more positive thing where not all the other kids would know that I'm telling him the same thing, is to, you need to focus and pay attention. But I did it in a manner where just he and I knew that and were able to communicate that.
Is it? Do you think it's always a good thing to get the kids involved in other activities, or?
Well, I think once again we kind of go back to the school setting, and we also go to the leisure and recreational setting. Is that not all kids are built or want to participate in recreational programming? For instance, my youngest son Grant, he has had a difficult time, even though several years I coached him in organized sports, just because of number one, everything's black and white and for him. And so he's playing in a league for kids with disabilities, and the rules are 1, 2, 3, and you're out. Well, they don't have any outs, and so that was something that was hard for him to comprehend because, okay, there were 3 outs. Why aren't they coming off the field? He knows the rules, but they've changed and adapted the rules for the kids so everybody gets to bat. However, that was difficult for him, or one kid came up and tagged him without the ball, and so he thought the kid was trying to hurt him. So all of a sudden, here we go. We got 2 10-year-olds going at it at home plate. And so those are the things that I, as a parent, and he as a buddy, that I've had to explain to them. Okay, you've got to stay right with him. because number one, he's fast and he's going to be out of sight in a minute. So you have to stay with him. You have to constantly remind him of where does the ball go when it's hit, what the rules are, where he needs to go when the ball is hit, and it's made a smoother transition. But for kids with autism and with Asperger's, if you're in a setting where it's very, very noisy, that's just like taking your fingernails and running them down the chalkboard, and that really it bothers them. So you don't, why would you put someone in a situation where it's going to be very difficult for them to be successful? So we try, and we'll continue to try to find the niche that grants leisure and recreational niche that maybe one of these days he'll find that he'll be able to do throughout his lifetime. But right now it doesn't seem like team sports are that. Perhaps we'll try swimming or something else. But right now, but it's a trial and error basis. I don't ever say don't do something because you never know when it might click and it might work.
Talk about your work a little bit with Project Life and how that kind of overlaps with what you do as a parent.
Well, one of the things at Project Life, and one of our main goals, is to provide publications to individuals who work with people with mental health issues, the individuals themselves, family members. We provide a resource, information about the different mental health problems and where they can go throughout the state to find resources that are available. Our publications are user-friendly, easy to read, and which makes it very, very positive, because someone can sit down and read about attention deficit disorder and understand it. And that's what we have tried to do with our publications, is to make them user-friendly, easy to understand, and in that way a parent or a sibling can get a better understanding of what perhaps their loved one's going through.
As a parent, have you had the experience of encountering a teacher who's resistant to your input into the process?
As I said earlier, I'm very fortunate with the Columbia Public School System that they want the best for my sons and daughter. They've always wanted what was best for them. So as a parent, and I think it's important for parents to educate themselves so they know about the disability, so when they go in and talk to a teacher, that they can explain what's going on in their child's life. The old adage, you can attract more flies with honey than you can with vinegar, and if you go in and provide that information to the teachers, it's going to make their lives a whole heck of a lot easier, and in turn they're going to learn how to deal with your child, and they want to make it a very positive learning experience for them. So in my work with the Columbia Public School System, we've been very, very fortunate, and I haven't had any troubles whatsoever.
Do you consult with other family members, other groups or anything like that?
Well, and I've spoke across the state of Missouri to some daycare associations and to some social work associations on attention deficit disorder. If they want to call our 800 number, if people are interested in finding out more about what we can provide them at Project Life, they're more than happy to do that. They can look on the website under Project Life and find out more information about what we provide.
With your work with Project Life and your role as a parent and such, do you deal directly with mental health professionals, therapists, counselors, those two?
We work primarily with mental health professionals, and I have done workshops with mental health professionals regarding attention deficit disorder, regarding ADHD, regarding anger issues. So I've done those throughout the state. We also work with therapeutic recreation professionals with Project Life and providing information to them, whether it's working with seniors and long-term care. We can pretty much take care of the whole continuum from children with mental health issues all the way through seniors and long-term care. So at Project Life we have several staff that are able to provide resources as well as do trainings. Not only myself but other staff members will do trainings regarding all the issues in the mental health that from long-term care and through children.
What would our audience primarily is going to be mental health professionals, I think. What would be one of your key messages to them, kind of in summary?
Well, I think one is that we want to be able to provide resources available to them, to give them, maybe perhaps they're just coming out of college, and that is easy to read, and that they're going to be able to pass on to those that they are serving, and therefore, they can help those. I think it's really important that the work that we do is something that will help people from generations on. Because you can pick up a book and you can read about attention deficit disorder, or you can read about schizophrenia, or you can read about bipolar, and it's a starting process. You don't wake up one morning and say, okay, I have ADHD. Everything's going to be okay. It's a process that you have to go through. You have to, number one, find out about the diagnosis. Number two, inform yourselves and become better informed about that particular disorder. Then three, you got to find out where those resources are available, because oftentimes you get the diagnosis and then you go, where do I go? And so with Project Life and our publications, you can look at that, and it provides a tremendous amount of resources, not only in Missouri, but also national resources. For instance, like the Attention Deficit Association, that's one of the resources, or the National Association for Attention Deficit Disorder. So all those kinds of things, all those resources are available in our publications.
And if you had a kind of a closing message to parents like yourself, what would you be telling them?
Well, I think number one, don't be afraid to ask questions. Because the more questions you ask, the more informed you're going to be. Don't be afraid to, don't take no for an answer, because it's your child and you want to do what's best for your child. Be educated, but don't force your opinion necessarily on the people you're trying to work with. Give them your opinion, empower them, have them help you in the decision-making process, so you're working together as a team. It is a team effort. It's you, it's your child, and it's the therapist or it's the educator. And if they're not all working together, then it's not going to work. The machine isn't going to work. But if you're all working together, the bottom line is to do what's best for the child. And if you can make your life easier, your child's life easier, and the mental health professional or the educator's life easier, then the child's life is going to be a heck of a lot easier too.
Well, thank you, Mr. Lanham. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Enjoyed being here.
The Missouri Institute of Mental Health is always looking for ways to provide the highest quality training programs to the people that we serve. If you have ideas of programs that you'd like to see in this or other formats, please drop us a line at feedback@mimhtraining.com. If you're watching this program online and would like to receive continuing education credit, please press the post-test button on this web page, take the post-test, and follow the continuing education credit application instructions. If you're watching offline in a media like a DVD, then the information that you need should have been included with the materials with your DVD. Or you may go online to mimhtraining.com, find this program, and take the post-test. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.